I'm Graham Robinson, Chief Technology Officer here at Data3. Joining me today is Carl Solder, Chief Technology Officer, Cisco A and Z. Today we're going to be discussing Cisco, innovation, and AI. Carl, there's a lot of talk about AI. Many people say it's at the top of the Gartner hype cycle. There's a growing number of people now thinking that AI is going to plummet into that trough of disillusionment, and that it's going to be years until we actually see any real value from the technology. Is AI just another solution looking for a problem?
I don't believe so. I think eventually we'll get to a point where AI is going to be serving and solving a lot of the use cases that customers are challenged with right now. I think with the advent of the current technology we've got with things like ChatGPT and Gemini and Claude, a lot of people are kind of looking at those tool sets to think, how can I actually use those in the business sense? But let's not forget that AI is not new. Certainly from the Cisco standpoint, we started doing our AI developments over 10 years ago. Our first AI tool set that we released to the market was nearly 7 years ago. So Cisco's been on an AI journey for quite some time. We've been thinking about how we can use AI effectively to really solve those customer use cases. And I think we've got some great technology solutions out there that can do exactly that. But to your point, I think with the release of ChatGPT, that basically announced to the masses that we've got this thing called AI. And I think with that, a lot of people are starting to kind of look at that and think about how we can use that technology without realizing there's a whole undercurrent of other technology which has been around for some time, is mature, and is actually solving real business use cases out there today that people can start taking advantage of now.
And I think that's the key for me.
I agree.
You read the Harvard Business Review and they talk about 80% of AI projects failing, but only 30% of generative AI projects failing. To me, that means 70% of generative AI projects are not being cancelled. They're actually proceeding through to production. I look at the stats on digital transformation, and only 12% of digital transformation projects have actually succeeded. And that tells me that AI is multiples better than digital transformation projects and the outcomes we're getting. So I fail to see how we really can say that there's no value if we're actually already seeing progress.
I would agree. I think on the AI front, there's the generative AI piece, but you also have to take in consideration that when you look at how customers are going to be consuming AI, there's going to be those tool sets like the generative AI where you're going to get that ChatGPT style interface. You're typing in, you're having a conversation, interaction to affect a workflow. But there's also those generative AI engines that actually sit inside an existing solution that a customer might not even realize that it's there. But it's there, it's doing its thing, it's actually providing value. But it's actually masked because it's embedded within a broader solution that the customer knows about, doesn't necessarily know that AI is actually behind the scenes doing its thing. And that's where Cisco, I think, have been focusing on, at least for the last 10 years. A lot of the solutions we've already brought to market has that AI kind of embedded behind the scenes. And most customers oftentimes, as I said, don't actually appreciate that it's actually there doing.
So it's fair to say that the AI adoption that we're looking for, if we really take AI from the top of the hype cycle and we turn it into something valuable and with true output, it's not going to be in the form of something like ChatGPT. That's in-your-face AI. It's going to be something behind the scenes, sitting behind the code, behind the application, where people are using AI without even knowing they're using AI.
I mean, we have a classic example of AI radio resource management sitting in the Meraki dashboard. So you could have a customer who's got an existing Meraki Wi-Fi network, and you've got this little AI engine sitting in the background, actually looking at how users are utilizing the Wi-Fi, looking at all the settings and the configurations, and trying to find ways in which we can optimize and tweak those configurations to provide a better Wi-Fi experience. Now, that's something that is kind of working in the background, and it's actually producing an outcome that is more favorable and better for all those users who are using Wi-Fi. But it's not necessarily something that they might appreciate that is actually AI. It is actually there, but it is there and it's actually doing its thing. It's actually serving a purpose and driving a beneficial outcome for the organization. And it's those kind of things which we've been doing for quite some time. And you might be able to argue the nuances of is it generative AI or not, but suffice to say it is AI and it is serving a purpose and doing its thing. It's not a ChatGPT in the traditional sense. But I think what you're going to find is that even with the ChatGPT, we're starting to, for example, see the introduction of virtual AI assistants. It's still very early days, but that's using a large language model sitting behind the scenes. It presents a brand new paradigm for how an operator is going to converse and interact with their infrastructure. Because rather than using a nice GUI and clicking on a bunch of buttons and clicking on submit, you're going to be typing and you're going to be having this interaction to put into effect a particular workflow. And that's a classic example of how potentially we can drive better levels of efficiency. So you think about a security operator who wants to put in place a security policy. Going through that large language model, using that virtual AI system, it can help derive an optimal policy, but also in the background, it can be passing through the existing rule set and saying, okay, well, I've got a couple of rules here, I can maybe converge and consolidate those into one rule that kind of do everything, but reduce the size of the rule set, make it more efficient, more optimal. And so they're the kind of things that we can start to see use cases of how this generative AI can potentially help operators be more productive.
So it helps us solve a bunch of problems. The question then becomes, is it more trouble than it's worth? Because if you think about, well, one of the questions that I get a lot of the time is, just very much focused on the threats associated with AI, the security concerns. Are we exposing ourselves to too much technology, and will the AI be used against us? What do you think around the AI's impact on security?
That's a really good one. I think from our standpoint, AI really serves as the foundation for how we're looking to evolve our security portfolio. AI actually appears in a number of different ways. First and foremost, in the back end, when you look at any security device, has to be armed with information to understand what are the current and active threats. So we have an organization within Cisco that's actually scouring the internet for new emerging threats, and there's billions of artifacts that they look on a daily basis, trying to look for those new active threats. But an individual person can't look through billions of artifacts. An artifact is like an email, it's a file attachment, it's a web link. You physically can't go through that volume of artifacts. So you have to use technology to help you. And this is where we're using AI to scour through all those artifacts to look for individual and new emerging threat vectors. And once we've actually got that, we can actually build signatures, which we can inform our solutions to say, hey, if you see this particular instance, that's something that you need to pay closer attention to. So there's that part of the AI which is in the background before you even start looking at the technology. But the technology itself, as I said, has those embedded AI functions that are serving a particular purpose. As I said, you could have an example of an AI entity that's actually looking for signatures of potential threats. And when it identifies that, it can alert the SecOps person, hey, I've seen something, you need to apply a little bit of focus and attention on this. But we've also got that AI which is using those large language models, which represents that new paradigm of how an operator is going to interface, operate and administer the network. And that, I think, is going to be driving a really, I think, a different way in which operators are going to be doing the job.
We've been around a while. We've seen the evolution of the PC, we've seen the internet, we've seen the cloud. Every time we go through a major technology disruption, what it means for our people and what it means for our customers is a significant reskilling.
Yes.
How do you see the impact of AI on the current skills gap that is being created by the acceleration of technology? And how do you see us applying AI, well, AI either making it worse or applying AI to make it better?
First thing I want to say is that we've both chosen a career where you never stop learning. You take a break, you come back and, oh, that's something new that I didn't know that wasn't there when I took the break. So I think that the mere fact of being in IT means that you're going to be on this continuous learning journey all the time because technology is changing. In fact, I think the advancement of technology is picking up pace. The generation of new IT practitioners today, I think, have got it a little bit tougher and harder than maybe when I started.
I used to say the only thing constant is change, but even the rate of change is no longer constant, it's accelerating.
So definitely, I think the careers that we're going to be continually learning. So AI is just another evolution, another chapter of that learning journey. That being said, I think it does change the game in terms of how we operate, also how operators will work with infrastructure that they manage. I actually talk about the evolution of operations from the traditional NetOps, which when I started it was CLI, beautiful CLI. We went through this motion of DevOps where we started using these software-defined networking tool sets to automate and assure, running scripts on compute to actually do some of the menial tasks. We kind of went through this AI ops where maybe a few years ago, we had these AI engines embedded in the solutions that were kind of enhancing the operational practice, so they'd be doing some things. And now we're moving into this world of large language model operations, where we're now starting to use these large language models, again, to accentuate the to accelerate the productivity of the operators.
Every period is getting shorter. Every epoch is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So what does it mean for our people today? Because what I see is I look back 5 years and I look at the way technology has accelerated, like it's accelerated out of the gate over the last 5 years. And obviously there's been a number of things happening around the world for the last 5 years that have stopped us from always maybe training our people, keeping our people up to date, really upskilling them, cross-skilling them. And so it feels to me like we've accelerated, but our pace of education hasn't kept up.
So there's a gap.
There's a gap, and the gap is growing. Yes. What does AI do for that?
It's a really good question. I think, when you look at the AI solutions that we've got in the Cisco product portfolio today, I think most IT operations professionals are going to be able to pick up that pretty easy. Most people, for example, have used ChatGPT. You get a ChatGPT style interface on a lot of the administration panels now. It becomes pretty intuitive. You might have to think about, what am I going to ask, or what am I going to talk to the AI assistant about? So understanding the capabilities of that AI assistant, for example, and understanding the use cases that you can actually put into effect, I think there'll be a bit of a learning curve in coming to terms with that. The one area that I think Australia will get to at some point in time, where I don't know that most customers are at right now, is when you actually build and run your own custom AI workload, which might help a part of the business. And it's those tool sets that, not even outside of IT, how those tool sets are going to be adopted by the general employee in terms of helping them do their job.
So when you say a custom AI workload, yes, you're talking about a custom, a specific application that the customer would be using, yes, that's probably leveraging a third-party large language model or small language model or micro language model to actually perform a business function. Correct. And that could be, in my head, that's obviously we go from the data center, we go to edge computing, we go out to particular devices, but we also go down to the mobile device.
Yes.
Is that what you're thinking?
That is my thinking. In Cisco's portfolio right now, we have an AI chatbot in our contact center. It's backed by a large language model, where you can have a proper conversation. If you think back a couple of years ago to the chatbots that you might have used, if you don't use the right keywords, it kind of doesn't do its thing.
It was all syntax.
It was all syntax. Yeah. But now you can have a true conversation with those chatbots, and it really has elevated the potential level of customer experience that you're going to, better experience you're going to drive for the users who are using that. I think that is kind of a new world that our operators are going to start going into. I'm talking about like a customer, but I'm talking about how an IT practitioner can actually use these tool sets to be more productive in doing the things that they do on a daily basis.
Final question, because I know we're well and truly out of time, and I could sit here and we could have this conversation all afternoon. AI. We're heading to utopia or dystopia?
I am a glass half full person, so I'm hoping it's utopia. I think that certainly within Cisco, there is a group of engineers who focus on ethics and how we can use AI in an ethical way. So I have hope that our engineering teams build that with that framework in mind, that we build AI tool sets that are going to serve mankind in a better way, that they're going to produce better outcomes for businesses, they're going to drive better productivity, they're going to drive better profitability, better customer experience. That's my hope for this. That being said, there's that bad side of humanity who might look to use those tool sets in a bad way. And I don't think that we can avoid that. The only thing we can do is to hopefully continue to build out this technology to help stop those things from maybe causing issues or concerns or trouble for us in the future.
I think it's fair to say, firstly, I share that hope. But secondly, going back to our conversation regarding security, there are obviously those malicious actors out there. Yeah. And my hope is that AI for the first time really gives us an opportunity to harness the good in people and scale it to a level that we can actually provide a better future. So with that, Carl, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, mate. I appreciate it.